We all got some things. Oh no! Up the bit rate. Fine. 9,000. You happy, YouTube? What does it say? Cool. Alright. Good morning and welcome to the Crypto Mining Show, your one-stop shop for all cryptocurrency news from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner. Yours truly, I go by Blind Run on the internet. That is my gamer tag that I've been using since Counter-Strike 1.6 or something incredibly old like that, way before the CSGO days. And in real life, I go by Matthew. Today we have quite a few fun topics. We are going to be talking about gaming. We're going to specifically talk about gaming and how it is more wasteful on electricity than even mining Bitcoin full force. We're also going to be talking about the new ASIC miner from Intel, which is disappointingly low in hash rate, so be prepared to be disappointed. Then we have quite a few different news articles surrounding various different mining companies, from Bit Digital to Marathon to Gryphon. All of them have news that are popping up today. So today's channel content will be primarily focused on mining all the way through. We aren't going to be talking about fundamentals or crazy Saitamon tokens that are doing automated liquidity. We are just focused on mining today. So sit back, buckle in, and we'll get into it right after a word from today's sponsor, Crypto.com. Today's sponsor is myself. To support the channel, click the join button below the video and you will get access to our privately hosted Rocket Chat. Selecting the $1.99 option will get you access, and after that you need to head over to the membership tab, scroll down, and expand out your membership perks. Find the section for connecting on social media, and in that section there will be a secret registration URL to join Rocket Chat, where you can sign up to enjoy talking with other cryptocurrency enthusiasts and miners without spammers, scammers, or bots. Alrighty, welcome back everybody, and we are down on memberships pretty significantly over the past couple months, so any help there would be appreciated. Now, if you've never joined and you just want access to the Rocket Chat, don't forget that you can go ahead and cancel that subscription. I understand that times are tough for everybody right now due to the economy, but we also provide that service as far as encrypted, self-hosted chat without the interference of scammers, spammers, or bots. That's the plug at least. Let's get into the first topic for today. New Blockscale Intel ASIC technology revealed, offering 580 gigahash a second of hash rate. This doesn't sound that good now, does it? So this is coming from Intel. This is coming from WCCF Tech. This is about Intel. Grid infrastructure is joined by Ergo Blockchain, Block Incorporated, and Hive Blockchain Technologies to become the first customer to work with Intel Blockscale Application-Specific Integrated Circuit, or ASIC. The new infrastructure will be able to power up to 580 gigahash a second hash rate for effective and efficient cryptocurrency mining on a large scale. Intel reveals today information about the newest Blockscale ASIC, utilizing several years of research and development. This ASIC will supply consumers with the energy-efficient hashing for proof-of-work consensus grids. Quote, momentum around blockchain continues to build. It is the enabler of decentralized and distributed computing, making way for innovative business models. To power this new era of computing, Intel is delivering solutions that can offer an optimal balance of hashing throughput and energy efficiency regardless of a customer's operating environment. Intel's decades of R&D in cryptography, hashing techniques, and ultra-low voltage circuits make it possible for blockchain applications to scale their computing power without compromising on sustainability. End quote. That's from the Vice President and General Manager of Custom Compute in the Accelerated Computing Systems and Graphics Group of Intel. Compute requirement for blockchains operating proof-of-work consensus tools is rising rapidly due to resiliency and capability to scale without surrendering decentralization. This increasing pool of computing power demands an immense quantity of energy, necessitating new technologies that can deliver the required capacity in a more energy efficient way while also being stable enough to mitigate long-term e-waste circumstances. For proof-of-work algorithms consistent with the ASIC-based systems and SHA-256 hashing, the Intel Blockscale ASIC will provide power efficiency and computing capacity required to reach scalability and sustainability. Intel will be capable of offering it in magnitude without compromising the stockpile of new CPUs or GPUs. This is another quote coming from Jose Rios. It says, Intel is committed to advancing blockchain technology in a responsible way, and we're proud to collaborate with and provide solutions to companies that are creating a more sustainable cryptocurrency ecosystem globally. The Intel Blockscale ASIC is going to play a major role in helping Bitcoin mining companies achieve both sustainability and hash rate scaling objectives in the years ahead. And he is the general manager of blockchain and business solutions in the accelerated computing systems and graphics group for Intel. Some key features for the Intel Blockscale ASIC include dedicated secure hash algorithm 256, SHA-256 ASIC processor, up to 580 gigahash a second hash rate operating at 26 joules per terahash on the power efficiency scale, on-chip temperature and voltage sensing capabilities, support for up to 256 integrated circuits per chain, and reference hardware design and software stack to jumpstart customer systems development. Customers of Intel Blockscale ASIC will begin to receive shipments starting in the third quarter of 2022. Beginning next year and into the future, Intel will be operating with providing future customers who convey the company's sustainability ideals. Let's go ahead and take a look at Bitmain real quick and compare that joules to terahash watts. So the newest, most efficient one that we have from Bitmain is going to be the S19 XP hybrid, which is 20.89 joules per terahash. And that's supposedly, at this point, the most efficient one that you can currently purchase on the network. Other than, I guess, well, let's just compare it to the S19 Pro for the best, right? So 20, okay. So that would be 29.5 joules per terahash. And over here, we are at the 26 joules per terahash. So it falls somewhere in between the S19 XP hybrid and the S19 Pro. It's not necessarily, in my opinion, the most efficient thing out there, at least from what I can tell. But, you know, it is right on par to be competitive with Bitmain. I was expecting a little bit better, to be honest, at least up until we saw the leaks of course, the first gen of the BMZ1 chip, which didn't look to be that great. And then it was pretty disappointing. And of course, they said that it was going to get much better with, of course, BMZ2. It's much better, but it's not much better than the competition that's already out there. It is still good news that we have another competitor within the scene. Of course, when it comes to Bitcoin mining in particular, the big downside that we have is the actual ability to decentralize the hash power across not just companies, but to the general consumer. And as far as I can tell at this point, it doesn't look like we're going to have access as a general consumer to these mining machines. And for, of course, any sort of cryptocurrency that is proof of work based, that is the preference. That's why you do still see coins that are still launching with GPU mineable only and ASIC resistance, because you have a consumer grade product that will go ahead and hash out. And I think this is very important to basically talk about. If we're talking about Intel, who does have the consumer outlet to get out into the hands of people directly, direct consumer, I think that it would be beneficial for them to go ahead and push that. However, as you know, when we talk about any of this and purchasing them, the problem is that large companies are going to be able to purchase in bulk, which is going to significantly reduce their cost. And this even happens within the GPU mining space, where A2000s get snagged up for super cheap in bulk by larger companies, and they're able to get them for like $400 to $500 a pop, while the consumer is paying anywhere from $600 to $650. But at least at the end of the day, the consumer is still able to purchase them. We even see this, of course, within ASICs too, where if you were going to purchase like a Bitcoin mining ASIC directly, you're always going to pay like a 10 to 20% premium if you're just purchasing one compared to what you could do if you're in bulk. Not only that, but it's also difficult just to find and locate all of these parts. And that is why, as the GPU market gets better, I think there will be a higher demand for GPU mineable coins. And we'll just have to see how that plays out. We do have more mining news. Bit Digital partners with Bitmine to host 7,000 ASIC miners. Bitmine will store the machines in immersion coolers for greater efficiency. This is something that a lot of people have been doing, but don't get confused. This picture is not a picture of submerged cooling from the best of my ability to tell. That doesn't even look like a sealed container, nothing, just a rusty old rack with a whole bunch of ASIC miners on it. But crypto miners Bit Digital and Bitmine Immersion Technologies have signed a letter of intent to establish a hosting relationship that will start with 7,000 current generation ASIC miners. The move comes several months after New York-based Bit Digital fully exited the Chinese market after the mining ban, shifting its focus to North America. Bit Digital and Bitmine Immersion plan to begin delivery of ASIC miners in the coming weeks and months, and to be at capacity by the end of August. Bitmain's latest Antminer ASICs start at $7,500 US, so the agreement could be worth in the $50 to $60 million range, and that's in USD. The companies plan to primarily mine Bitcoin in immersion-cooled containers, which keeps the machines cool and allows for higher output and better energy efficiency. Bit Digital and Bitmine have agreed to a revenue split of the mined Bitcoin under the multi-year deal. Quote, "We are happy to begin our relationship with Bitmine Immersion Technologies and have known the team for some time. As a company, we have been intrigued by mining using immersion technology, and we are happy we found an ideal hosting scenario allowing us to utilize the benefits offered by immersion cooling of our machines," end quote, said Bit Digital CEO Brian Bullitt in the press release. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about here too is the difference between them basically utilizing the Bitmine immersion cooling as opposed to just purchasing like the S19 hybrids. We've talked about the S19 hybrids in the past, but the big downside here is the multiple points of failure. And I think that basically having an immersion setup where the actual maybe like S19 Pro just plops into a vat full of essentially fluid, mineral oil, or whatever cooling fluid they decide to go with, is more beneficial from a maintenance standpoint as well, other than if you need to remove a machine, which can be a little messy if you've ever messed with immersion cooling in the past. But this will be the path that a lot of people, I think, start to move towards, especially if you look at the fact that a lot of people are starting to mine within West Texas. And in West Texas, of course, you have huge heat problems and so on. For the most part, if you're going to be mining cryptocurrency in a hot environment, it's still just beneficial from a cost perspective to work on airflow as opposed to any sort of AC cooling. Raised floor cooling, I think even in data centers, has been proven to be inefficient at this point. And basically utilizing any sort of AC components is going to drive up your cost, of course, and destroy your efficiency. As opposed to that, if you're using something like immersion cooling, your upfront cost is going to be pretty hefty. However, you should, in theory, depending on the setup, have not near as many points of failure as you would with an SP or XP hybrid. And then in general, should only have like, or be able to deploy multiple machines into these vats, however they decide to configure them. I think that it is a potential, especially if we're talking about building in hotter environments, to make more sense and definitely reduce the failure rates on the ASIC miners as well, depending on how close together those hash boards are and so on. I've been kind of working or playing with the idea of immersion cooling just for RTX 3090s. It's very hard to keep up, of course, though, but that will be on the channel and covered once I get it kind of figured out. Let's talk about another one, Bitcoin miner Marathon, on track to meet its hash rate guidance despite delay. The miner is holding all of its Bitcoins and currently has 9,373.6 Bitcoins with a fair market value of approximately $427.7 million in USD. Marathon Digital, one of the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miners, is still on track to meet its hash rate guidance of 23.3 exahash per second by early 2023, despite a 45-day delay in deploying its mining rigs during the first quarter, the company said in a statement Monday. Here are the key points. The company attributed the delay to a longer than expected permitting process for the required power for its operations. And believe you me, I feel them here. So like when you see these types of things coming from companies, it's true. Like the fact is like I'm still waiting on 3-phase. I'm still waiting on a permanent location. And this is all based on the power company. And depending on where you are located, especially if you're located in an area that generally is okay with cryptocurrency mining, the other thing that's happening in those areas is a huge influx of people. And that's not just because of Bitcoin mining. A lot of it has to do with just the environment. It typically means that they have better schools. It typically means that they are not overbearing on the economy as far as from a tax perspective. A lot of people are relocating right now. A lot of people are getting out of dense populated areas such as Los Angeles, such as San Francisco, such as New York, and they're moving out towards the center of the US. And typically this is also where a lot of the Bitcoin miners are also moving, is more into the Midwest, more into the center of the United States and getting out. So you have a huge demand on the power companies to supply power to all of the new infrastructure that's being put into place and so on. So this isn't necessarily surprising. Typically, power flows from power stations into the grid. However, to ensure we have a consistent power supply when the renewable sources are operating intermittently, we also needed power to flow from the grid back into the power station at scale, end quote. And this is something that is also being done within cryptocurrency mining in general. And a part of the reason for this is the basically the financial incentives for the mining companies to be able to get that to flow back into the grid so that they can get essentially the incentives that are built into the power grid in general and each geographical location. In some cases, if you're looking at, if you're looking within like West Texas, for example, and some of the companies that are building out there, some of these Bitcoin miners are getting paid to turn off their rigs. And in some cases, it's even more than they would make within a 24-hour day of just mining Bitcoin, depending on the size of the operation and fees and all of that sort of stuff, network activity and so on. But this is pretty common now at this point. And that's coming from Marathon CEO Fred Thiel, noting that this process required permitting, which delayed the development. The delay comes after Marathon said that during the fourth quarter of last year, maintenance to the power generating station in Hardin, Montana, affected the company's Bitcoin production in November. However, Thiel said that, quote, the delays are now behind us, end quote, and expects to reach 23.3 exahash a second by early next year. Marathon mined 12,500, or 12,000, sorry, not 12,000, that would be insane, but I'm sure there are some bigger ones out there. 1,258.6 Bitcoin during the first quarter, a 15% increase from the previous quarter, and 556% higher than a year ago. The miner is still holding on to its mined Bitcoins and currently has 9,373.6 Bitcoin with a fair market value of approximately $427.7 million US dollars. Marathon also confirmed to CoinDesk that is open to selling the company for the right offer, as was earlier reported by Bloomberg. Marathon shares have fallen 12% this year, while Bitcoin has fallen 2.6%, and mining peers Riot Blockchain and Core Scientific have dropped 9% and 16% respectively. So definitely you should also pay attention to here that it's interesting that they are open, or Marathon is open to selling, of course, their mining operations, which I find curious. I think that we're going to see a lot of people liquidating and getting out of the cryptocurrency mining space here over the next couple of years, not dissimilar to what we've seen previously with other Bitcoin super cycles. Whenever the market kind of comes down, people want to get out, and then when it starts to pump back up, people want to get back in. The strategies we're going to have to employ to basically take over and kind of be able to survive the bear market's going to be really interesting. And I definitely am aware of that and trying to figure out how I'm going to do it. My personal strategy here so far as what I'm looking at is to just be able to outperform, of course, the bear market, meaning that I need to expand further in my mining operation and take those opportunities with cheap GPUs and so on to build bigger, and then be prepared, of course, for the next super cycle run. Now, we should also talk about the fact that things are looking very weird within the market. Now, within the cryptocurrency market as it sits right now, you know, we would be expecting through April and so on, or after April and so on, or just in this certain time frame, to see a huge dip. But we do know also at the same time that the traditional super cycle has appeared to be kind of thrown out. It's different now, and a lot of that has to do with what's going on within, of course, the economy in general, the overprinting of the US dollar, for example, a lot of the stuff that's going on with sanctions and such. What we see, I think, is possibly a higher price point for the bear market. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to have like this bear market just sit right at the $40,000 mark, for example, on Bitcoin all the way through the next couple of years. Should be interesting to see how it plays out. But what I am expecting is basically a better case than what we saw previously with the bear market, but still seeing kind of a stalemate on the pricing. I could be completely wrong, but as you guys can see, the bounces back and forth, it seems to sit right around this $40,000 to $50,000 mark. And if we are going to follow that super cycle, maybe we just got lucky and we get a higher baseline, right? So if we were typically looking at a Bitcoin super cycle, you would expect the price of Bitcoin, for example, to drop back down to the previous all-time high of the super cycle, which would be around 21,000 US dollars. However, that doesn't appear to be happening, but that doesn't mean that you're not in a bear market, essentially, is the point there. Let's talk about yet another mining company. This is Gryphon Digital. And Gryphon Digital Mining ends plans to go public through merger with Sphere 3D. The companies agreed to terminate their agreement, which was first announced last June. Gryphon Digital Mining, a privately held company focused on mining Bitcoin using 100% renewable energy, will not be going public via a reverse merger with a publicly traded data management firm, Sphere 3D. The company's announced Monday. Now, what are we seeing here across all of these articles? What we're seeing is cold feet, essentially, from especially the firms that have not participated in Bitcoin longer than a full cycle. Things like Sphere 3D, who maybe last year during June see this huge pump and just think it's going to be only up, and they're wanting to get in on it. But as soon as the market gets a little bit shifty and doesn't look to be as promising, they want out. This means this is indicative of bear market behavior from your traditional retail investors. In a statement, Gryphon and Sphere said that they had agreed to terminate the agreement, quote, due to changing market conditions, the passage of time, and the relative financial positions of the companies, among other factors, end quote. Basically, what they're saying to me is that market conditions are not good enough for someone that is not familiar with Bitcoin mining to want to hop into it. They're scared. There's definitely fear surrounding the market right now. The deal was announced on June 3rd and initially slated to close in the third quarter of 2021, but the companies pushed back that time frame to the fourth quarter due to the complicated regulatory approval process, and then again to the first quarter of 2022. Under terms of the agreement, Sphere said that it would have issued 111 million shares to Gryphon shareholders. Gryphon CEO Rob Chang, who previously served as CFO of Bitcoin miner Riot Blockchain, would have become CEO of the combined company, which would have taken the Gryphon name. Quote, as a pending shareholder and operating partner of Sphere 3D, we look forward to the mutual success of both companies, end quote, Chang said in the Monday statement. NASDAQ traded Sphere's share price closed down 1.8% on Monday. So like I said, what we're seeing from these three Bitcoin mining companies in general is fear surrounding the market, the best I can tell. And what that means in general is it's indicative of us moving kind of sideways for quite some time. I don't see, necessarily all of them jumping out of the mining market, but a couple key notes here, of course, is Marathon's willingness to sell if provided the opportunity, and of course, Sphere 3D's unwillingness to go ahead and move forward with going public with, of course, digital mining. So there we kind of go as far as all of that is concerned. Let's talk about gaming. So one of the big arguments against cryptocurrency in general, especially Bitcoin, is going to be the proof of work algorithm requiring a lot of mining power. There is sort of basically an extrapolated explanation of power usage for the gaming market. Now, as you guys know, it's always been gaming versus mining, especially when it comes or pertains to basically GPU mining. And one of the big attacks that a lot of people like to make on Bitcoin mining and of course cryptocurrency mining in general is the use of power and its overuse of power and its damage to the environment. But if we look at the numbers as Brains has put together here for us, it looks like it would be better off for you to mine Bitcoin and stop playing video games, neither of which personally I'm going to do, but you would be better off doing that for the environment than necessarily continuing to play games and just stop mining Bitcoin. Let's get into it. Much has been said in the past couple of years about the amount of electricity consumed by Bitcoin mining. In fact, negative environmental impact has become one of the go-to talking points for Bitcoin pundits to criticize the digital currency. However, data provided without context can be very misleading, and this is often the case when journalists write about Bitcoin mining. The total estimated energy consumption is indeed quite high and still growing rapidly as the network hash rate continues to climb. However, the real world impact is frequently misrepresented and misunderstood. In this article, we'll be comparing the electricity consumption of Bitcoin mining with all of the world's video game consoles and computers. Then we'll discuss the difference in typical electricity sources for the two and their respective environmental impacts. Let's begin with an update on the most common for comparisons, Bitcoin versus countries. Bitcoin electricity consumption relative to countries. It became popular around 2017 to compare Bitcoin's total electricity consumption with that of entire countries. To that end, the University of Cambridge created a handy tool called the Cambridge Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index that tracks annualized electricity consumption of Bitcoin mining and makes interesting comparisons to provide some context. As of November 2019, Bitcoin's estimated energy consumption is in the same range as Colombia, Venezuela, and Chile. It should be noted, however, that this is still a small amount compared to the top global electricity consumers, China at 5,564 terawatt hours per year, and the USA, which is at 3,902 terawatt hours per year. Now let's get to the real comparison we want to know about. Bitcoin versus video games, electricity consumption. First, it's important to clarify that the following calculations are estimates with potentially high error margins. Bitcoin's mining energy consumption varies depending on the total network hash rate and the efficiency of each mining machine being used. For example, producing 100 exahash a second with only the newest and most efficient ASICs would consume substantially less electricity than, say, 100 exahash a second with only ASICs from 2017 and earlier. With that being said, CBECI has a rather robust methodology for calculating electricity consumption, so we feel comfortable using their estimate of 71.55 terawatt hours per year as of November of 2019. Global electricity consumption of video game playing is substantially more difficult to estimate. For one, there is a large diversity of devices that are being used for gaming. Consoles such as the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One consume less electricity than high-end gaming computers such as a Digital Storm Velox. So treating all gameplay equally will not be remotely accurate. On top of that, there is the extra complication that gaming consoles and computers don't run 24/7, unlike Bitcoin mining machines. Accurately estimating the energy consumption of video game playing around the globe requires consideration for these factors and many others. In fact, it's well beyond the scope of this simple blog article. Fortunately, a team of researchers at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory carried out an incredibly thorough research study on the energy consumption of video games playing in California in 2018. They took into account factors such as popularity of various gaming systems, their respective efficiencies, typical user behavior, and much more. You can get a better idea of the thoroughness of their methodology from the graphics below, calculating the weighted consumption of a wide selection of gaming systems based on typical user behavior. And here are the systems. And it's pretty interesting here too. The energy use varies. Where you can kind of see PS4 Pro taking a ton of power. They do not have, because this is done in 2018, the PS5 or the Series X or S here calculated in. But ultimately, after taking all this data into account, the research team concluded that the annual consumption of video game play in the state of California for 2016 was approximately 4.1 terawatt hours per year. Now, our only remaining task is to somehow extrapolate that estimate to cover video game playing from the entire world. This is a good time to reiterate that these estimates have a high potential for error margin. First, we need to use the estimate from California to come up with an estimate of the total United States consumption. California's population is nearly or approximately 40 million people, while the whole of the U.S. population is approximately 327 million. If we assume that the behavior of video game players in the rest of the US resembles California, then we can simply multiply California's 4.1 terawatt hour per year consumption by the ratio of 327 to 40. From that, we get 33.5 terawatt hours per year as the total consumption for the USA. Next, we'll use data collected by Newzoo and presented in WEPC's 2019 Video Game Industry Overview to further extrapolate for the total energy consumption of video game playing worldwide. In this case, data about revenue is far easier to come by than more nuanced data about the number of gamers around the world and their typical user behaviors. Note that according to Newzoo, quote, the revenues are based on consumer spending in each country and exclude hardware sales, tax, business-to-business service, and online gambling and betting revenues. Here's a list of the leading leading gaming markets in the world. China is number 1, the USA is second, and Japan in third, and everybody falls in pretty low behind there. Considering that the US accounts for 32% of the global gaming revenue, we're going to make the admitted far from perfect assumption that it also accounts for about 32% of the global energy consumption from gaming. In that case, we arrive at a grand total of 104.7 terawatt hours per year consumed by video game play worldwide. So what's the takeaway? Based on and I would also like to point this out. One of the things that's not covered in here is all these numbers are prior to 2019. And the rate of video game play has significantly increased due to, of course, the pandemic and so on. So it's potentially much higher than this. Potentially much higher than this at this point. Based on our very rough estimates, we found that the worldwide electricity consumption of people playing video games is 46% higher than the total consumption of Bitcoin mining as of November 2019. However, since these are such imprecise estimates, the bigger takeaway is simply that the two amounts are pretty close to each other. This provides much better context as to the true scope and impact of modern-day Bitcoin mining than comparing the annualized energy consumption directly to small countries. But it's even more important to understand where the energy is coming from. In their June 2019 report, the cryptocurrency investment and research firm CoinShares estimated that more than 74% of all Bitcoin mining electricity comes from renewable energy sources. In fact, about 50 to 60% of the total hash rate comes from the Sichuan province in China during its wet season due to the abundance of cheap hydropower there. Now, of course, we also had to take into account that China has banned Bitcoin mining and most of it has moved over to the United States. However, I would argue the fact there that we would want to take into account that as far as West Texas is concerned, a majority of that is either using up wasted natural gas or utilizing wind or solar, so renewable. So either reducing waste, power waste, right, or utilizing renewable energy. Much of which would otherwise go unused because of its difficulty to store and transport. When the wet season is over, many miners move their operations elsewhere to harness cheap thermal and wind power. The reality is that access to cheap electricity is a necessity in order for miners to compete long term. With this economic incentive to find the lowest cost electricity possible, many miners have set up shop in rural locations where excess renewable energy is produced. This is simple supply and demand. The supply in these locations is high, and the demand is practically non-existent since the excess energy is so difficult to store and transport to urban areas where there are consumers. On the other hand, the U.S. Energy Information Administration estimated that only 23% of the world's electricity generation came from renewable sources in 2015. Since the majority of video game playing likely occurs in urban areas, it's reasonable to guess that the same 23% figure is a decent estimate for the amount of renewable energy powering gameplay. In that case, we get the following breakdowns. Essentially, what you would see here is that for Bitcoin mining, 19.6 terawatt hours per year would be non-renewable, while 52.95 terawatts per year would be renewable. In the case of gaming, 24.08 terawatt hour per year would be on renewable, while 80.62 terawatt hours per year would be non-renewable. So what do we really get out of this? What we really get out of this is, of course, going to be not necessarily a way to attack gamers on the basis of energy consumption, because I don't think that really gets us anywhere, but it does give you an idea of essentially the overestimations, the blown out proportions for how bad Bitcoin mining is for the environment if you consider this. We also aren't even talking about all of the other problems within gaming, actually, and just the internet and computers in general when you come to the fact of needing all of these servers to be run for downloading of games, playing of games online, and so on, and massive data centers that are not calculated into this, such as Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. So it's potentially way worse than this. This would just be the basis of the machines run out of somebody's home, right? This isn't necessarily taking into account the total electricity consumption of gaming when you start to take into account all the requirements on the server side for all of this, which I think is a fair point to bring up. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below and within the chat. Like I said, me personally, I'm not going to stop mining and I'm not going to stop gaming. It is what it is. That is how I feel about it. I do also feel like we're blown out of proportion as far as, I suppose, energy consumption goes. I think that it's a fair point that Bitcoin mining, though, is more incentivized to move to renewables than any other industry currently in existence. And as long as those incentives continue to get better and better, that will continue, of course, to take place. Let's talk about mining profitability for the day. It's not that great. We're showing $242 for the day at 0.07. That is our estimated. For the last 24 hours, we did 237 US dollars at 0.06. Our average hash rate has been 5.13 gigahash a second, with the current hash rate sitting at 5.37. And I have 18 workers online. Now, admittedly, yesterday I was out working on setting up a new mining rig and adding in some 1660 supers with the RevTech motherboard. We'll have a review coming out for that, but I wouldn't say that I enjoy that motherboard at all currently at this time. It's very finicky. It's not as easy as just setting up like an H110 Pro BTC and plugging in my risers and booting it up and going. It has a lot of weird finicky things going on with it. Examples would be once you get past, for example, in the Hive OS form or the Hive OS boot, it'll post, you'll see the Hive OS kind of splash screen, the start one, you know, where you can troubleshoot or whatever. Once you get past that, it's a black screen. You can't see Hive OS, so you're going to have to put like your rig.conf file on the actual micro SD that is supplied after you flash it, put it in, and then once it boots up, you can see it in the Hive OS dashboard. At this time, I've kind of got that sorted. Now where I'm stuck is getting the 1660 supers to work with an A2000. This was something that I had a lot of questions about. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be possible. The A4000 will work, but for whatever reason, I can't get the A2000 to work. We'll be covering it in a vlog video that, frankly, I stopped last night because I was too exhausted. I went home. I just went to bed at 8 o'clock last night. I was done. It was a long workout and stuff like that, but that's kind of what we've been working on. We also have Luck Pool with VerisHash, and it looks like we have 2 people donating some hash rate there. Dreamfly was, Hodl Pockets, thank you. And Real Rigos saying thanks for the content here on right now. So thanks guys for the donation on the VerisHash. Pretty awesome. We're at 1.7 Veris coin a day right now. So there you go. Let's take a look at profitability for the RTX 3090 according to What to Mine. Correct our Zell hash number there for Flux. Ethereum's in first at 6 cents a kilowatt hour at $4.89 a day after power. Once again, we still have the NiceHash Zell hash algorithm taking over and being more profitable than mining Flux directly at basically $3.82 a day after power, while Flux is at $3.57 a day after power. Pretty interesting there. Ergo is holding strong this week at $3.63 a day after power. We covered some updates from Ergo yesterday. Lots of exciting stuff coming to their network, so pay attention to what's happening on Ergo. I think from the mining perspective, that is going to mean a lot. Ethereum Classic still maintaining over $3 a day at $3.34 a day after power. And then if we scroll down, we got Ravencoin down here at $2.83 a day after power. Mining pool stats. Let's go ahead and see if there's any huge changes to, of course, the network. We're down 2 exahash a second from yesterday on the Bitcoin network to 220 exahash a second. Looks like Foundry Digital lost 1.5 exahash a second of that. And then I'd have to go see the rest down there later, but you get an idea of what's going on. On Ethereum, we're still right at 1 petahash a second. No huge changes. Let's take a look at Ergo and see if they're stabilizing with this new price increase. I'd say no, because what you see here, and this is very important to actually note. So if you guys can see, let me make sure you can see all of this, because this is important. The way that Ergo works with their difficulty increase is actually delayed quite a bit compared to the hash rate on the network. So the hash rate on the network goes up significantly quicker and then stays there for a while before the difficulty actually goes ahead and adjusts for the for the higher amount of hash rate. Now, there's always a delay between hash rate and difficulty. Ergo's just seems to be much, much longer of a delay. What this ends up doing is kind of creating a weird problem for miners, and I think you see it in their hash rate charts, Whereas the last pump when it was looking very profitable was here, and then it dove back down. And then once it dove back down, you can see a corresponding drop. But that corresponding drop, see how awkward this is on the difficulty chart? We're low, 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 low. Then right here, when the hash rate is low, the difficulty spikes. And then the hash rate starts going back up, and it adjusted back to where the difficulty is low. So what's going to happen is this increase in increase in hash rate will not be realized on the difficulty chart for, well, let's go ahead and get an idea, right? This is March 29th. Oh, so you see that March 29th spike started to happen, or the spike started to happen here. And then March 30th is when it started dropping, and that was at the peak of the difficulty. And then March 31st was the peak of the first drop off, which is still at pretty high difficulty. And then our difficulty starts rising back up on April 3rd because, well, the difficulty was starting to come back down from the low hash rate. But because of that delay, it makes it very, very difficult to actually mine Ergo and get a predictability, because what's happening is the miners are hopping on when it seems super profitable like it is now. And then that difficulty spike happens and they all drop off, and it takes a while for it to level out. So the problem is that it can't realize its price to hash rate and difficulty metrics. The network can't as well as some of the other networks. And I think that's really hurting Ergo right now from an adoption rate on mining in particular. So I'd be careful, and like essentially it's kind of weird. When the hash rate is high, maybe if you want to just mine it while it's high, and then when that difficulty comes in, just be prepared to jump right back off. And it's going to take a while for the APIs to update too, right? So Ergo is going to have that problem over here. Now in chat, Panzer did say that the block reward has dropped to 63. So EIP 27 has gone through, and that's going to affect it as well. So there's a lot going on here. You definitely want to pay attention to it. Ergo is a weird one. I want it to do well, but the difficulty delay and the reemissions is really making it hard to say that it's going to be able to do good. As opposed to, like, if you look at Ethereum Classic, it had its price raise and then kind of had its hash rate raise, and then it had its, as you can see here, other than this dip that was from the API being broken at Hive OS, you basically see it pretty consistent all the way across, along with the difficulty just being pretty consistent all the way across once we saw that pump. And I think that makes it a lot easier to essentially mine Ethereum Classic and say, okay, well, this seems like a reliable network from the mining perspective. Other ones that aren't as reliable, Flux has an unreliable network, not necessarily due to a difficulty problem or anything like that. What's going on with Flux is because you have a hybrid system of nodes and proof of work, so kind of proof of stake, but master nodes for the old school people, that may be a little bit more indicative of what's going on. Of course, not addressing, of course, the reason that's need for Web3 is a little disingenuous, but from the network statistics here, it will make a little bit more sense. That's influencing people on the NiceHash side to basically randomly rent a whole bunch of hash rate, which is making the hash rate on Flux very, very inconsistent. That makes, for infrastructure providers, which are the miners, it makes it very difficult to just stay on that network the whole time, because those spikes that come from NiceHash drastically increase and decrease, of course, your profitability on Flux, making it very unpredictable. And because of that unpredictability, I think that Flux definitely has a problem here too. I think that both Ergo and Flux, from a mining perspective, have issues. Now, they're different issues, right? But they are very apparent, especially from the infrastructure provider standpoint, right? Let's go ahead and look at Ravencoin. Ravencoin's problems, I think, are primarily due to the algorithm being super hard on the hardware. That's how I would see it, but it's been pretty steady, steadily declining in difficulty and hash rate, kind of sitting around. It's got these little waves going on, but I wouldn't expect Ravencoin from the miner's perspective to hop on, just like I said, primarily due to the fact that the algorithm's pretty hefty on the core. Flux has that same problem too. And heat's going to affect a lot of that. And I think that's why Flux and Ravencoin do, from an algorithm standpoint, do have that similarity. And that's why you see a very inconsistent hash rate across them. There's even a coin like Ergo, right, which is inconsistent to an extent. There's not as many spikes, right? Like once it kind of levels out, it'll level out for a little bit, and it has even less hash rate. So just some notes and observations. Let's look at mining pool profitability. For the past 90 days on Ethereum, Mining Pool Hub was in first, with Flexpool in second and ZET in third. Last 60 days, excuse me, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Flexpool in third. Last 30 days, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Flexpool in third. Last 21 days, ZET in first, Flexpool in second, Nanopool in third. For the last 14 days, ZET in first, Flexpool in second, Ethermine in third. For the last 7 days, Mining Pool Hub in first, ZET in second, Flexpool in third. For the last 3 days, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Ethermine in third. And for the last day, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, and F2 Pool in third. ASIC mining profitability is staying around the same. You have the KD6 at 135 US dollars a day, the Jazz Miner X4 at 127. And from there, you know, you have the KD5 at 91, and Miner L7 at 62, which is actually kind of pumped up a little bit. Scrolling down to the S19 Pro, we're still right at that 1954 a day on Digibyte. And then if we look at BT miners, they are going to be out, or they are out this week at the Miami Bitcoin conference. If you want to go by and say hi, if you're out there. And no huge changes in pricing. Everything seems to be exactly the same. Let's get into questions and answers for the day. Super chats never required, always appreciated, easiest to read, so they'll get read first. Tagging at Son of a Tech will get my response, and I'll be able to talk to you guys clearly because it highlights my name in orange and it's easier to pick out in the chat. So let's go ahead and hop into it. All right. Panzer says, at Son of a Tech, yeah, the Ergo reward, we already talked about that. Patrick says, at Son of a Tech, Micro Center has 1660 supers for about 320. Is that a good price to buy? That's where I'm buying at, 320 and below. Daniel Ring says, at Son of a Tech, upgrading my power to 200 amp tomorrow. Bye-bye tax return. Nice. Congratulations on the upgrade. Chet Pot says, at Son of a Tech, I've been having fun fooling around with difficulty waves created by solo rentals. Block rewards get weird in interesting ways during those times. Yeah, it's definitely weird right now, especially on Flux. Mining My Way says, at Son of a Tech, well, if you're a developer, why don't you go help putting together a couple of graphics cards and plug them into a wall? Isn't that hard? If you're a developer, I don't understand what you're trying to say. I guess you're trying to make an attack. I'm not really sure, bro. The Yo Groove says, at Son of a Tech, I can get my hands on two A10 Pros for cheap, but am concerned about the merge. I would get them if I'm sure I can mine ETC with them, but find conflicting info about this. I can get my hands on 2 A10 Pros for cheap, but I'm concerned about the merge. You would get them if you're sure you can mine ETC with them. What you need to look for is a firmware update for whatever particular model you're purchasing. The A10 Pros, I'd have to do some Googling. I typically stay away from the Ethereum ASICs, so I haven't dove into that. Dennis Matovich says, that son of a tech is the X11 worth looking into. I'm not really looking into any, once again, Ethereum ASICs personally. Nicholas Pitt says, that son of a tech, have you heard Roblox lets you mine real crypto, but they pay out in Robux? No, that's interesting. So do you just have, they basically mine like Ethereum or something and then convert it to Robux? I haven't heard of this. That sounds fun though. KG says, at son of a tech, ETC pump this year. I think that depending on the merge, a lot of GPU mineable altcoins will pump. Will it be enough to save the market? No, but as far as the pump goes, not financial advice from it, but from an investment standpoint, I think that those would be the ones you'd want to be looking into, because essentially the miners are going to have to hold that coin. So all the new mintable coin will be held at a higher price point to make up for obviously the reduction in profitability of their farms. Catholic Sola says, that's son of a tech, do you think that Intel ASICs will be available for retail buyers? So I think the way that it's going to work with Intel is that they're going to have third-party, essentially third-party board manufacturers, kind of like NVIDIA has, Asus, and kind of like AMD has XFX or whatever. I think there'll be something similar to that. So the question won't be, will Intel ASICs directly be available, but will there be a third-party company that takes the Intel boards, puts them into a system and packages them up and sells that direct to consumer? That's a possibility, but I don't think that that will be early on. I think early on it does appear that Intel has specific deals where all of their production is going to specific companies that are planning on utilizing them. So I don't see that happening at least for the next couple years. Mining My Way says, that's son of a tech, are you still losing money on the Helium network? Not really losing, just not really making much. Gabe says, that's son of a tech, do you feel that crypto trading bots go against the spirit of crypto by trying to game the prices? Any other opinions on them? I don't utilize crypto trading bots. I think that they have just, I think I would equivocate it to gambling, essentially, in my humble opinion, because you still have a gamble there, right? I guess to a certain extent, it's a lot less likely because they have locked in numbers and so on, and you can leave it set and go. As far as like for the spirit of crypto and so on, it really just depends on what you're talking about. Like if we're talking about trying to fix money, then we're talking about Bitcoin. If we're talking about crypto markets in general, things like Ethereum and so on, I mean, that really comes down to just the stock market. So I wouldn't consider it any different than the stock market at that point. My Cinema X says, ask son of a tech, do you still believe in mining after the merge? Yes, I do. Ben's 310 says, ask son of a tech, what is the worst heat, Ton or Raven? That's a good question. So Ton is a little bit more controllable because it is core only. Raven, I would say, is a little less controllable because it depends on the core clock with the memory clock. So if you're just going to be maxing out your core clock for Ton, then Ton's going to be no different than Raven. But you have the potential for reducing the heat on Ton because you aren't going to have that requirement based on the hash rate that your memory needs on the core, right? Dennis Matovich says, that's time to tech the X11 algo of the Dash Axe coins. Okay, I thought you were talking about the Jazz Miner. My apologies. Dash is one I always wish I would have gotten a node on, but not necessarily mined. KG says, that's time to tech. There are existing ports for Antminer E3 and the dev plans to release this year, I believe, for the A10 Pro. There's your answer. Losing with Larry says, that son of a tech, what happened with the NVIDIA hackers? Was hoping for a full light hash rate unlock soon. I think they're in jail. Wasn't it that kid they caught? Real Rigo says, at son of a tech, how do you find your next spec coin to mine? How you decide on it? Could you elaborate? Just through the community. There's not really a way to really find them unless you're just participating within the GPU mining community. And you get somebody that's like, hey, there's a new coin that spun up. And then you go, oh, okay, cool. And then you hop in the Discord and there's a couple hundred people there and you start figuring it out. There's not a resource for new spec mineable coins really, other than just crypto Twitter and YouTube, Discords, that sort of thing, right? And the hard part too is a lot of the Discords, they don't focus a lot on the spec mining. Usually they're focusing on their own specific project, right? So you got like the Flux Discord, whatever. So it's hard because a lot of those guys aren't going to want to tell you to go mine something else either. Dan San says, at Summit how's your approach on GPU settings, max hash per rig or conservative clocks for less use of power? I think it obviously depends on like your power cost, but the other thing to that is going to be like longevity and so on. There are arguments for more conservative clocks. Me personally, in the summer, I'm going to be a lot more conservative, maybe taking those 5700s down to like 51 to 52 mega hash a second from the 56 mega hash a second, just to keep them running a little bit cooler. There's that argument. I think that like also like the 3070s are a great example where I'll go down from the winter being at like 63 mega hash a second to like 61 mega hash a second. Now in my area too, power cost goes up in the summer and goes down in the winter. So it kind of works out perfect for me where when the power cost is higher, I'm going more efficient, running cooler to keep the cards cooler, that sort of thing. And then when I can run them at higher hash rates in the winter, the hash rates get clocked up, the power's cheaper, and so on. And once again, that's going to be you sitting down with a spreadsheet and figuring it out kind of for yourself at the end of the day. The old ghetto says, ask Simon Tech, are you buying any light hash rate cards for other algos like Flux, Ergo, Raven, or are you staying away from all light hash rate? I'm doing 1660 supers right now. That's not financial advice. That's just personally what I'm doing. I think I made the mistakes on the 3090s enough to not want to mess with them that much. And the 1660 supers are just easy to deploy. Now, Myers Collective said that the hackers that were caught were only two guys, not the whole group. In which case, I don't know what the rest of the group is doing and why they haven't released it all. Maybe they're scared, though, too. I mean, the fact that two guys got caught still is relevant in why or why not the rest of the data was leaked, right? At least how I would see it at the end of the day. Poheg Mining says he has a real world question. Best crispy chicken sandwich, Wendy's or Chick-fil-A? I would not go to either one for that. So, no. I'd go to Popeyes. Or Raising Cane's. Patrick says, at Tech, I lost my signal earlier. Does 320? Yes, I said that. That's 320 is below is kind of what I'm looking at for 1660 Supers personally. SES says, at Tech, trade some 3070s for 3090. I'd like to have higher VRAM once the mining is done. I'm not going to probably do any trading, no. John English Tech says, at Tech, does it get humid here or there in the summer? Yeah, I mean, Texas gets humid. Pretty much all over Texas, unless you go like West Texas, right? Jorge says, ask Tech, Chicken Express, bro. Yeah, does Chicken Express have a chicken sandwich? I've never done. I thought the question was specifically chicken sandwich. But I go to Chicken Express a lot. One of my favorites. I don't need a redheaded girl or Mormons making my chicken. That doesn't make, I don't, look, I'm just saying it's not the best chicken. That's white people chicken, and I want good chicken. And I'll get canceled again. But no, I don't go to either chicken or whatever. One of those two at all. I haven't been to a Wendy's in like 30 years, and every time I drive by a Wendy's, it's like one car in the parking lot. I assume it's the dude working there. John English Tech says, at Tech, do you monitor the humidity in your mining room? No, not right now. I have in the past, and I need to. Dan Sand says, at Tech, would you consider paying more dollar per hash on a 20 series versus a 1660 Super based on more gigabyte and more mineable coins? Would you consider paying on a 20 series versus a 1660 Super on more gigabytes and more mineable coins? I don't think that the 1660 Super has less mineable coins necessarily. Maybe not quite the efficiency. Depending on the pricing, like the 2080 Ti definitely seems worth it to me. But it just depends on where you're getting them as far as prices go. Mining My Way says, outside of Tech, love mining Ergo on my 3070 Ti. 3070 Ti still seems to have a pretty high power consumption compared to hash rate most of the time. But I do know that they're coming down in price a lot. So there's an argument for it depending on the price point at which you get in and the power consumption cost at your particular location. Les BRD GRZ says, are the 1660 Supers you get from Micro Center Samsung memory having issues overclocking? So some of them are Samsung, most of them are Samsung now, and not as many as are like the Hynix or the Micron. If you are doing the Samsung 1660 Supers, you have to overclock the memory, not underclock. Leonardo Mohammed says, at Tech, you need to try some Caribbean food, better seasoning methods. I have before. I would agree. Jorge O says, at Tech, regarding ASIC mining farm, renting a warehouse or doing a small shipping container under a metal roof, what would be the best? Renting a warehouse or do a small shipping container under a metal roof? So that would come down to what you have available to you. So the reason you would rent an area, right, is going to be you would already have the infrastructure there in a warehouse to just move forward. If you're going to get a shipping container, you have to worry about the infrastructure being in place or building the infrastructure. Like, say, if you're going to just plop it on your property, or if you're going to take it out and plop it on somebody else's property, or if you're going to buy a new piece of land. Whereas if you're just going to rent a warehouse, you're going to already have infrastructure in place, or at least access to basically essentially what it does give you is access to the people that can also help you figure that out. Because at the end of the day, presumably, if it's a warehouse, your landlord's going to want to help you find more power, find, people to help you with that sort of thing. Whereas a shipping container, you wouldn't get that. And so it's really going to be dependent like on your specific situation once again. And those are the things that you're going to have to weigh out positives and pros and cons on, right? Tactic says, at Son of a Tech, can you speak about Hive OS being located in Ukraine? Just wondering if we could lose access to Hive because of the war. So the only thing you would lose access to, at least from my understanding, would be like the API. Like you're still just on Ubuntu. So I guess you could lose the front end and all of that. If the infrastructure was completely destroyed. That being said, they clearly have it running in other data centers that are not located in Ukraine. So you may lose close access for like the UK countries or whatever, but you're not necessarily going to lose access in the US because clearly already their mining pool is in the US. Plus, on top of that, they probably have servers running here that are pulling the APIs. It's not like they're just, look, Hive OS is massive. They haven't just been sitting on a single server in some data center in Ukraine and serving the entire world. Like you have to scale that out. Should you buy, says at Son of a Tech, 1660 Supers launched for $229 and the 1660 Ti at $279. Yep. Pohick Mining says, at Son of a Tech, you're welcome for this, by the way. Anything you can do to keep the ball rolling. There you go. Chadwick's Racing says, at Son of a Tech, why 1660 Supers and not the RX 580? For a couple reasons. First of all, the 1660 Super is newer. Second of all, as far as the 30 mega hash a second, which is respective on both of them, the 1660 Super does do it with less power consumption. Third of all, the 1660 Super in most cases does not have actively cooled thermal or actively cooled memory modules, meaning you have less maintenance on the GPUs. And fourth of all, it supports more coins post-merge of Ethereum, and therefore you have less risk than you do on the Polaris RX 580s. Ghetto Squash says, that's Tech. I went to Texas for the first time this spring, and y'all have way better options than Wendy's up here in Wisconsin. The Wendy's is about the best we get. Well, I'm sorry, man. It's rough. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it. We have lots of chicken here and lots of barbecue. Just lots of good food in Texas. Les says, thanks, Son of a Tech. After past 1400 on MEM, you get crashes shockingly on the 1660 Super Core, locked at 1050, getting 30 mega hash at 1400 on MEM. I mean, that sounds about right, around 30 mega hash a second. You can get, with a flash on the Hynix memory, you can get more potentially, but you also get more instability. I'd be happy with that 30 mega hash a second. Mining My Way says, as Son of a Tech, 177.1 mega hash at 150 watts and 170 at the wall for each card. Oh, you're talking about the 3070 Ti's. Got it. Scott Schultz says, as Son of a Tech, what's your favorite rig MOBO? The ASRock H110 Pro BTC Plus. They're the only ones that like I have multiple of that just don't die. And they keep running. Ben's 310 says, as Son of a Tech, do you own any dehumidifiers? No, I do not. Michael says, as Son of a Tech, any advice on mining in Texas, legal or tax-wise? I'm moving to College Station soon. No, I mean, obviously, if we're talking about legal or tax-wise, you want to talk to your, CPA or whatever, depending on the size of your setup. ACQ says, as Son of a Tech, are you a native Texan? I was born in Texas. I lived in California as a young kid for a while, maybe like 8 to 12. And then I lived in New Hampshire from like 12 to 14, something like that. And then moved back to Texas for high school. Dan San says, as Son of a Tech, based on what to mine, 2080 can mine 37 different coins and a 1660 Super can do 25 coins, but I don't know if what to mine is accurate on this. I'd have to actually test it out. I don't think that what to mine is necessarily accurate because obviously they don't include a lot for a lot of different cards. Because we've seen that before with like the 5700s, like, or even the 6000 series GPUs, where it just doesn't even calculate a lot of the algorithms that they can mine. Albeit, of course, the AMD cards typically do mine a lot less anyways. So it's probably true that a 2080 can mine more coins. For example, I think like Cortex. Is it Cortex or Conflux? One of them has a bigger than 6 gigabyte DAG. So like, for example, that would kick the 1660 Super off. Abhishek says, Asavatech, would you take an old 2080 Ti or a new 3070 Ti for the same price? That's a good question. I probably have to look at what to mine. If we did a 3070 Ti, keep getting phone calls over here. If we did a 3070 Ti, I don't know why it's not calculating any. Something is weird going on over here with the price and stuff. Ergo at 268 a day. I think the 2080 Ti, the only reason I'd lean towards the 2080 Ti is lower power consumption, and it technically does do more in ETH, right? Because it doesn't have the light hash rate. So it'll do 60 mega hash a second in ETH, and it does much better on Flux. So I'd probably go 2080 Ti, personally. Life Unbridged, thanks for the $9.99 super chat. Says, do you have any videos to show how to set up from scratch? There's a lot in the past. I probably do need to do an updated one for sure. It's one of those things, like if you do a lot of content on YouTube, the problem ends up being that you have videos that are like 3 years old and you're like, I did that already, but you should do it. Like still again. It's kind of weird. So I've always kept up with the how to mine like Ethereum on Windows, but not necessarily kept up with all the others. So I probably do need to do some revisions, and that's fair. But there are still some up there. I think the most recent one is from last year, which was how to build a mining crate rig from the ground up. Let me see if I can find it for you. And that one is straight up from the ground up, everything you need to do, and is current and relevant. And that was October 26th of 2020. So I probably do need to do another one. For sure. Gandalf Gray says Asavatech was on earlier for the news about Marathon Digital. Here's one thing that's scary about Marathon Digital that you should know, Gandalf, is that they said they're open to selling if somebody is willing to purchase them. Is that fair enough? They won out. Alan Chang says, Asavatech, would you be able to tell us how we can determine if the 1660 Super has passive cooling memory modules? Typically, all the single fan ones have passive cooled memory modules. It's all good. Mining Company says, Asavatech, check out these sensor push HT1 sensors for temp and humidity. We'll need a sensor push gateway to check reading remotely. All right, cool. Ben's 310 says, Asavatech, are your rigs on generators or UPS? They're on just PDUs. I'm not using for mining cryptocurrency. I would never think that you would have to spend so much money on a UPS or even a generator at that point. I'm not at the size to really invest in a generator. And then UPSs, once again, it would be cheaper from what I was doing on calculations, because I was looking at natural gas generators. It would be cheaper to get a generator than it would be to get UPSs, which would be extremely inefficient. Now, if you're doing a typical like data center build out, then you would have both a generator and a UPS, right? Should you buy, says, at Son of a Tech, can you comment on the Asus TUF 1660 Supers are the same regarding the active memory cooling? Let's go look. I think those are active memory because it's the dual fan model. I don't have one, but if you go to Amazon here, which I'll link this over to you, one of the ways you can tell, luckily, is that they put a picture of the bottom of the cooler. And what you'll notice is that there are spots, the little squares on the block there means those are spots for memory or thermal pads. Master Chief says, at Son of a Tech, I'm a new miner currently building your first rig with 1660 Supers. What brand of 1660 Supers seem to be the best to you? The ones that I've been using are the single fan MSI. Those are the best that I've had. Unfortunately, right now, I think they're pretty expensive and sold out most places, but I believe it's the Ergo ITX. And these have the passive memory modules on them. It's the same with the 1063 gigs, I believe. Yeah. Damien says, that Son of a Tech is 900 too much for a 3070 Ti. I would feel like it is. So once again, we go back to like a 3070 Ti is going to what? It's not going to mine Ethereum that well. For that price, you could buy 3 1660 Supers and have 90 mega hash a second on Ethereum. Albeit probably at slightly higher power consumption. Or you could possibly, I don't know. That seems high to me. Not financial advice, but that seems high to me. I could think of a lot of different options that I would rather do. Texas Ace says, at Son of a Tech, yesterday you said mining from home doesn't make sense, but according to your numbers, 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Oh, and you retracted the message. Damn you. Detroit Iris says, at Son of a Tech, what to mine doesn't even list flux on a lot of the 20 series GPUs. Correct. Correct. I wouldn't, it does not. And their flux numbers are typically off as well. Because they aren't calculating the mini Z numbers, which are significantly higher than any of the other miners. Andre Morris says, at Son of a Tech, what do you think is the best coin to mine with the 1660 Ti after ETH changes to proof of stake? You could just look at what to mine to get an idea. For the 1660 Ti, I believe it's going to be Flux. More than likely. Yeah, I would say it's probably going to be Flux. But we'll have to see what happens, right? Hey, Les, thanks for joining and becoming a member. You rock, my man. PXL says, that Son of a Tech, finally got my A2000 by 6. Love this card over your 1660 Super rig. Is there a downside to the A2000s versus the 1660 Supers? No, the A2000s are great. I think they're going to be the number one cards. It's really, the fact is, it's going to come down to basically the idea that because the A2000s are so good right now, A majority of those are getting bought up by large mining firms, which is driving the price of them up. So most A2000s on the market that I'm looking at, they're around 600 to 650. Whereas, you can grab the 1660 Supers for 300 to 320. That's the big deal. Detroit Iris says how to mine Caspa. Yeah, I'd love to get to that. Michael Lavelle says, that's time of attack. When you pay payroll from a mining company, do you pay capital gains and payroll taxes? So you would pay, you're going to pay the short-term capital gains tax when you sell it, right? And then you would pay, that would go onto the sheet or whatever. That's going to be a question for a CPA on exactly how that goes through, right? I have people that do that for me, but my understanding is, not financial advice, and please talk to somebody else, is that yes, like you pay the capital gains under the LLC when you cash it out, and then you pay the payroll taxes when you put that into a personal bank account. My Cinema X, but like yeah, that's it. My Cinema X says, at time of attack, do you shut down your rigs if there's a thunderstorm? No. Honor Karakaya. Anyways, at time of attack, when you build a rig and you're using 2 PSUs or single hard to find 1600 or more watt PSU and expensive. Typically, like, I'm going to suggest people use parallel miner with breakout boards. That being said, like if you want to use a standard power supply, like you can get away with like the cheap ones. I've used them, the mining ones off Amazon, with some luck. I think I've had 2 die on me. And then if you just want ones, they're never going to blow up like the 1600 watt EVGAs. But I feel like you waste a lot of power with those as well, because you just don't have enough 6 pins coming off of it. Dan Sand says, ask Time of Attack, if we can't make profit on mining after power, are you mining and holding the coin, or shut down and wait a couple years to be ready for the next bull? That's a good question. For me, it's going to come down to like, honestly, like what happened. Like if I can't afford to run it, then I can't afford to run it. Like that's just it. Like I don't make enough money, or haven't made enough money to like float the farm for 3 years. So if it can't make money, it can't make money, right? And we'll just have to like bob and weave through that. If it can make and clear the, if it's clearing the cost, if it's even clearing the cost and I'm losing a little bit, but I can clear it with other things, then we'll just keep going, right? Because the goal will be to keep the company running through the bear market. The goal won't be to make money through the bear market. The goal will be to keep the company going. That'll be the goal. Alex says, that's time of tech playing with pool, switch to flex pool. How long until full reward at 5 gigahash? I know most pools have anti-hop in place. How does that work? I think go to their FAQ for flex pool and you'll get a better idea. They have that specific question answered in there. And I believe it's like 6 to 8 hours. Nicholas Kane says, ask Time of Tech, just wondering what your gigahash is on Caspa and how much you're mining a day. I haven't checked in a while. I'm not going to lie. It's set it and forget it. The node's running. And I only have 1 gigahash, which is like 8 1063 gigs. And I have not checked in a long time. Colton says, as Son of Attack, for me, the 1660 Supers don't make sense when the 2080 Ti's exist. Can half the GPU density. That's true if you're getting 2080 Ti's at 600 or less a pop, I think is where that would be. Other than the fact that you will have an additional 6-pin to plug in, and you do have basically more heat to take care of and dissipate. And well, that's about it. So, I mean, like I do like, of course, the The 2080 Ti's. It's just not like you can go purchase a bunch of 2080 Ti's brand new anywhere, right? The Stick Shark says, "Ask Son of a Tech, do you have an alternative to the paywall to access Rocket Chat? I prefer YouTube not taking a cut from you." No, I just used the YouTube one because at this time I don't have any alternative that I think that it's easy for us to manage. The YouTube membership's just the easiest to manage. It's hands off. You do it and then it unlocks all the information you need. And I'm not sitting there individually emailing people because it's just too time consuming to do that. It might be something to where we could move to something like Locals or something, but they're going to take a cut too. All those services would. The only other option is to like build your own website and go from there. But as of right now, I think I'm overcommitted as it is. Abdul says, "Hello, Son of a Tech. I recently bought a 1660 Super off Newegg, but I've realized they come as Hynix. I tried to BIOS mod it, and it turned into a Samsung and refused to hash. That's because you BIOS modded it with a BIOS mod that has Samsung memory. So if you're going to BIOS mod it, you're supposed to BIOS mod it with the BIOS that supports Hynix memory if it had Hynix memory on it. Just basically plug it in and reflash it back. Hopefully you backed up the BIOS and flash it back. Or go to Tech Power Up and find your card on the list and download it and BIOS mod it back. Squash says, "Ask Son of a Tech, have you used Mining Cave ATX power supplies?" I have. And so I have had one of them basically have the fault break on them. That's the only downside I've run into, where essentially whether you turn the power's always on. Like the power switch basically doesn't work. Damien Ives says, "Ask Son of a Tech, Asus is doing a bundle deal on the 360HX ROG monitor and the 3060 Ti for $1,000. And Best Buy sells the ROG monitor for $700. If you return to Best Buy, you're getting a 3060 Ti for $300. If it works, it works." Talon says, "Ask Son of a Tech, Patreon." I think we would use Locals over Patreon. Scott Schultz says, "Ask Son of a Tech, why are you saying TI, bro?" Yeah. I get the joke. Abdul says, "Ask Son of a Tech." All right, thank you for sure, man. All right. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. It's 11:11. Make a wish, everybody. Don't say your wish out loud. Mine will be in relation to, of course, Ethereum. And then we'll be good from there. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe, and the notification bell. And I will see you guys next Tuesday.